Welcome to Believe in Chiefs, part of the Believe Network. Joined by former Chiefs offensive lineman Joe Valerio, I'm Jeff Fedotin. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, and follow this podcast, and tell all of your Chiefs fans to do the same. You can also watch us on Believe TV around the country, in the airports, and on YouTube. On this week's show, Joe, the Chiefs are headed back to the Super Bowl. We're going to break down another classic AFC Championship game, another classic Bills-Chiefs playoff game, and also preview a little bit of Super Bowl 59. But Joe, before we get to all that, you're right now we're going to go back in the past. Joe, you're not too far away from the old House of Pain, right? Where you had one of your best playoff victories.
Yeah, I'm recording this in Houston, Texas, where we where believe it or not, Jeff, a lot of the folks that I work with don't really kind of remember the Oilers that much. I mean, it was a long time ago, right? I mean, and if you're probably 40 or younger, like, you don't really think much about the Oilers. I mean, that was 1993 when the team, when we beat the Oilers in that playoff game, and that was the last year of the Houston Oilers, which a lot of people say that game was the reason why the Oilers disappeared from Houston, that if they would have won that game and gone to the AFC Championship, there are people that have said, and I think it's been on one, I think it was like on one of those E60s or something on ESPN, where they talked about the downfall of the Oilers, that had the Chiefs not beaten the Oilers, they might still be the Houston Oilers. And they might have hung around a little bit longer before they exited the city. And yeah, so I'm in Houston recording this, and makes me think back to that magical run that we went on, and our visit here to Houston, and winning that game that we were kind of pretty underdogged in, if that's a word.
Not only a magical run, but now we know that you single-handedly destroyed a franchise, Joe.
Yes. Well, not me single-handedly. The other 53 guys plus the coaches. Yeah.
I mean, maybe the other Joe had a little bit, but it's really Joe Valerio. So.
Yeah, and Keith Cash, whipping the ball at Buddy Ryan, in the end zone after he scored to, go against that vaunted 4-6 defense. But yeah, it's Jeff, what a game. I mean, here we are, right? We're at the precipice of history, something that's never been done before, and something, I think I saw a statistic. I think it's been since the early 2000s since any major professional franchise in the United States has three-peated. And I think we go back to the NBA, and we go back to, I believe, the Lakers, right? Back in the early 2000s. So not only we're standing at the first time in the history of the NFL that a team will repeat or could repeat winning the Super Bowl 3 in a row. Just doing it in professional sports in the United States is a rarity, and in any sport. So yeah, we're one step closer to it, right? The Chiefs fans are one step closer to seeing that happen. And easily, you could say at any point this we couldn't be at this spot, but here we are, and they're standing right on the doorstep.
Great point, Joe. And taking it a step further, the Chiefs have already made history, because no back-to-back team in the Super Bowl era has won back-to-back Super Bowls and then made it back for a third time, let alone regardless of who wins. But yeah, so a great point there, Joe. And what a classic game. Both quarterbacks, I thought, were excellent, Mahomes and Allen, and very similar. The difference to me in the game, the plays on fourth down, the Chiefs stopped the Bills there, and the Chiefs, on the other hand, ran some great fourth down offense, notably the Mahomes' run, which is very similar to the fourth down call in Super Bowl 58, Joe, kind of an RPO run there. So I think the difference with the play on fourth down, and the Chiefs' defense, I thought, was just better. I think the Chiefs' defense is just better than the Bills, and the Bills stopped them a couple times. They forced the turnover, which was great, but I think they just couldn't get the Chiefs off the field quite enough, in contrast to the Bills. So,
yeah, Jeff, I mean, when you go and you look at the statistics of this game, it's absolutely insane.
All right, we're back.
We're back.
So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I think when you look at the stat line, Jeff, you really, if you just looked at it without watching the game or fast forwarding or scrolling all the way down or up the stat line to see what the final score was, it would be really hard to tell who won this game. I mean, literally, when you go line by line by line, 22 first downs for the Bills, 28 for the Chiefs. I mean, 10 rushing first downs for both, 9 passing first downs for the Bills, 14 for the Chiefs. I mean, 3 first downs from penalties for the Bills, 4 first downs from penalties for the Chiefs. I mean, Jeff, you just go down 68 total plays for the Bills, 63 for the Chiefs, 374 yards for the Bills total, 368 for the Chiefs. I mean, 9 drives for the Bills, 10 for the Chiefs. That could be the difference right there, right? Yards per play were almost even. Passing, Jeff, it's unbelievable. Line by line by line, it would be really hard to tell who won the game when you really look at it. I mean, and because there are some things you look at, you would say like the red zone, the Bills were actually 3 for 3 and the Chiefs were only 4 for 6. So you would look at that and go, ooh, did the Bills win this game? Mm-hmm. Like it's really hard to tell. I mean, penalties, the Bills did have 48 yards of penalties. The Chiefs only had 21. So there's a good 27 yards of field position, and time of possession was almost even. I mean, if anything, you see the turnover stat and say, oh, the Chiefs had a turnover and the Bills didn't have any. Who won this game? Like, it would be really hard to tell. I mean, just looking at that from that little segment of the statistics, you'd think, man, this was a close game, and it was. And I think it was, like you said, Jeff, it just came down to some really key plays. And again, I think defense wins championships and offense wins games, and the Chiefs offense did enough to get it done, and the Bills, didn't. And I think it was really a defensive battle that the Chiefs came out on top of. Jeff, the thing that I know I really want to talk about tonight, and this happened with it a lot throughout the course of this season. It's happened through the course of the last few seasons. This playoff, I think it was sort of demonstrated a lot. Jeff, what's going on with going for 2 all the time when somebody just feels like they should go for 2? I feel like that's part of what cost the Bills this game.
Yeah, I
really do. Even though if you add up the 2 points that they would have gotten by kicking it, they still would have lost by a point, 32 to 31. But nonetheless, Jeff, there's a momentum. There's a way that it changes everything when, like, if you just would get the 1 later on down the road, it makes you do different things because you can kick a field goal and tie. And now maybe you're down by 4 instead of being down by 3 if you just would have kicked the 1 and gotten the extra point. Like, that whole philosophy of going for 2, like whenever it just whimsically feels like a coach should, I think coaches are going to think differently about it if they watch this playoff run for all the teams, that it actually cost teams games going for 2 when they should just kick the 1, even though they may have missed a field goal or even though the math's not working, just get the 1 point and move on.
And Joe, that is a great point. And the Bills missed 2 2-point conversions. So, you're talking, yes, they lost by 3, but that's so, if they get just the, it's something to think about. And one of them I got, like, one of them, there was the penalty by Justin Reed, jumped offside. He was trying to block the extra point. So I get it. They're like, okay, 1 yard. We definitely have to, it's only 1 yard and we're so good with Josh Allen on the tush push. Let's just go for that. But they missed 2 2-point conversions, which is key. And you almost wonder, maybe the Bills should have thought, geez, well, we didn't get Josh Allen on this 1 2-point conversion. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe on 4th and 1, maybe we should try and mix it up. I think that's another interesting angle too.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's just something about just get that 1 point, man. just and because you never know how these with some of these games that get a little more higher scoring, how it's going to all turn out, and then you're in a rock and a hard place of whether you need to score a touchdown or kick a field goal. And I don't know. I just think points are so crucial these days in the NFL, especially when you get 2 teams that are matched up like this. I don't know. I just anxious and curious to hear how listeners feel about that whole going for 2 just because the math makes sense. If it's, if it's 14 to 11 and you're like, well, I'll go for 2 so it's 14-13, or if it's 14-12, try to make up that 2 points and get it tied and go for 2. No, just kick the 1 and get within 1 point. Like, I don't know. I'm over it. I'm over going for 2 points. And I just hope that it doesn't happen in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs, that they have to make that kind of decision where they're thinking about whether or not to go for 2. Just grab that 1 and go. It just was something that really bothered me in that game on behalf of the Bills. Not that I wanted to see the Bills win as a Chiefs fan, but it just bugged me.
Well, we're all rooting for smart football and good games, so I'm with you. And more on this on a second, but Joe, we have a couple exciting ads to read here. First, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day competition with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC. BetOnline is your number one sports betting source for the new year. Every touchdown to three-pointer and hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. And Joe, I'm excited about, I know we have a lot of listeners here who are into fantasy, especially daily fantasy. Well, Underdog Fantasy offers a unique approach to fantasy sports. With its simple pick-'em style format, you can select players you believe will outperform expectations without the complexities of traditional DFS. The user-friendly interface and growing community make it easy and fun to play. And Joe, it's really cool. We have, for listeners out there and fans, we have a promo code that I encourage you to use. If you use promo code BLEAVCHIEFS, that's one word, BLEAVCHIEFS. Well, the promo code gives new users a free pick and up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So 2 real cool sponsors ads that and I encourage listeners to go to both sites. Definitely use that promo code there. Joe, I know we're going like back and forth here, but I wanted to ask you, we knew, I even texted you during the game that I felt like Commanders-Eagles was kind of the JV game before the Bills-Chiefs, the matchup everybody was excited about, said it had got great ratings. It was a classic game. The first one was a bit of a drubbing. But Joe, you're in Philly. You know this team really well. We know how much of a challenge the Bills were. Who's the bigger challenge, Bills or Eagles?
Watching the Eagles play, I would have to say, when I'm going to go back to one of our awesome guests, Andrew Brandt, right? And he has an awesome podcast called Business of Sports that he mentioned on our podcast. And if you haven't listened to it this week,
great listen, yeah.
Listeners, give a listen. The Business of Sports, it's a fantastic insight from a completely different angle. And he really talked about Washington not being a great team and how football really comes down to a total team matchup, right? And I think there's a lot of fans that were riding the Washington wave of Jaden Daniels and this magical run that he was on, his rookie run, which was awesome. And it was great for football. I mean, imagine if Washington had gotten lucky and beaten the Eagles and gone to the Super Bowl, to have the first rookie starter in the Super Bowl in 59 Super Bowls. It's crazy, right?
Happened. Yeah, it never happened.
That's unbelievable. So nonetheless, I think we all got swept up on that. And I think even as an Eagles fan, growing up here and watching, like, I was worried about Washington because I'm thinking, man, they beat Detroit like handily, but Detroit didn't match up well. And Andrew Brandt talks about that. And when you look at what their matchups were against the Eagles, it shouldn't even have been a game, and it wasn't, right, at 55-23. Now, I think if Washington, and our big mantra this week, right, we said it a couple of times, we tweeted it, you tweeted it, turnovers, right? Mm-hmm. Turnovers are critical, and Washington just turned the ball over too much. Like you can't do that against a team like the Eagles. They're going to capitalize on it. You can't have 3 fumbles lost in a game and think that you're going to beat a team in the NFC Championship like the Eagles. Because when you look at the way they do match up. So anyway, Jeff, to answer your actual question, I really think the Eagles are going to be a tougher game because I think there's matchups there that when you go position by position, and I mean, we're going to get granular as we look at this throughout the course of the week, right? And as fans get more familiar with this Eagles team, and you go through and you watch and you look person by person, position by position, matchups are going to be critical, right? Matchups that you might not even think of, things that we talked a lot about the linebacker play. And I think, just to go back for 1 sec, I think we talked about how we felt like the game was going to be, or at least I felt like the game was going to be won in the middle of the field. And I really do believe it was. I'm not just patting myself on the back for bringing that up. Like, I think our linebacking core, with what they were able to do containing Josh Allen, won that game. And the way that we played between 5 yards from the ball to 15 yards from the ball. And remember, we called it that box, right? Tackle to tackle, end to end, 4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and then all the way back to like 15 yards. The Chiefs dominated that area of the field in the Bills game. And that's what we're going to have to do against the Eagles. Because when you look at these matchups and you look at Jalen Hurts, who can run and he can hurt you with his legs the same way that a Josh Allen can. Would you ever have thought that Patrick Mahomes was going to outrush Josh Allen in the AFC Championship?
One of the stories of the game right there.
Defense, game plan, Coach Spags, and also the way the linebackers played, the way they spied, the way the team rushed. They won that battle from the 4 yards beyond the ball to 15. We have to do that against the Eagles if the Chiefs are going to win this, because Jalen Hurts can do it. He can run. He runs the option. He runs real option. He just doesn't run like RPO. He runs option where he will run the ball. There's a lot of designed runs. There's really nothing I can even say about Saquon Barkley, because I really do believe at this moment he deserves the MVP. I thought it pretty much earlier on. I know there's been a lot of talk about Patrick not even being in the mix, and I think he's holding that as a chip right now, and it's a chip on his shoulder. But nonetheless, Saquon Barkley, I feel, and I'm not just being an Eagles homer, I really do believe he deserves the MVP, because without him, I don't think the Eagles are in this position. I think they would have had a good playoff run, but Jeff, he has been, when you talk about the most valuable player to a team and the impact that they have, I dare you to tell me that Saquon Barkley to this point, to this day, doesn't fit that bill. Like, it's
100%, Joe. I actually voted him I vote for the Pro Football Writers Association award. So I did vote for him for MVP. He didn't get it. Lamar did, but for the same reasons you mentioned. And he also has a good chance. Terrell Davis is the all-time record for rushing yards when you include playoffs. Just so we know Eric Dickerson has the regular season record, but if you include playoffs, it's Terrell Davis, because he had that great Super Bowl run. Saquon has a chance to break that. And Joe, we were texting about this. I was watching the first drive of the Commanders. They took half the quarter. They only got 3 points, but it was a really impressive drive to take like 8 minutes. I'm like, wow, this might be something. And then I think it was the first play, or maybe it was at least the
first play. It was the first play. First play of the game.
Saquon has that and you're like, all right, never mind.
Yeah. Exactly. And to score 55 points after not touching the ball for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you think about it. And Jeff, just to continue on the offensive matchups, right? And when you look at the Eagles and you look at their depth chart and you look at their potential threats on offense, Jalen Hurts, right? He's a cool customer. He's likable. There's not going to be anybody out there that can't say they like Jalen Hurts. I don't care if you're the Eagles' worst enemy, like biggest NFC East rival, Cowboys, Giants, whatever, and the Chiefs playing them in the Super Bowl, the most diehard of Chiefs fans, no one's going to say, well, I hate Jalen Hurts. He's a guy you want on your team. He wins, right? So, you got Jalen at QB. Saquon Barkley absolutely should be the MVP, or, he's obviously a finalist. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, right? I mean, two super solid receivers, right? We all know about what they can do. Dallas Goedert at tight end. I mean, look, he's having a season. He had a couple injuries there towards the latter third of the season. He came back from them. Everybody saw that stiff arm he had a couple playoff games ago. He's become a factor for the Eagles at tight end. I mean, almost to the point where it's Travis Kelce like in his, maybe not at his peak, but definitely towards the beginning or this sort of like mature age of Travis Kelce's career where he's becoming a real game factor. So specialty wise, Jeff, those are some matchups we absolutely have to look out for and say, oh my God, like how are we going to prepare for this, six-headed monster of what, the Gannon, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles can put out there. The biggest question mark is going to be the offensive line. That's going to be the biggest question mark
with their injury. You think because their injuries, you mean, yeah.
A little bit with the injuries, right? We saw that Cam Jurgens was out of the game. They moved Landon Dickerson to center. They brought in Tyler Steen to start at guard. And all of a sudden, Dickerson does something to his knee. We'll learn more about that in the coming weeks, I'm sure, about where he's going to be and how healthy he will be. Cam Jurgens was not even going to play in a game that was your game to play, your game to get you to the Super Bowl. I mean, Cam Jurgens was not going to play in the NFC Championship against a team that, they still had to worry about. So that's I think could be the Eagles' Achilles heel. They have obviously a couple weeks here now to get healthy and see where everything is. That plays to their advantage as it does for everybody, going into the Super Bowl, having the bye week. But that I think is probably the number one thing where you're going to see Chris Jones trying to take advantage of those two guys, whether they play and they're not playing healthy, or if, Jurgens plays and Dickerson doesn't, they bring Steen back. Like Chris Jones is going to have a field day. And I watched, that Eagles game when Cam Jurgens came in. I would say 90% of the time when they pass rushed, they were bull rushing Cam Jurgens because they knew that his back wasn't 100% and he was not going to be able to lock down the bull rush. So the Commanders were bull rushing Cam Jurgens every single passing play because when your back is hurt, you can't stop the bull rush because you can't lock in and you can't get your back to support what you're doing, and you become very susceptible to getting bull rush back into the quarterback.
They even failed on a tush push because of that. I think Jurgens was back in at center when they failed on that. Joe, we're going to take a quick break here, and then I have a couple questions for you. Joe, you mentioned the injuries, and I think that's important too. The Chiefs are pretty much as healthy if they've been. They came out of the Bills game very healthy. I think that was another factor in that Bills game that, the Chiefs are the better team and the Bills need some breaks to go their way. They were already without Taylor Rapp, their safety, who's a good player, had a pick in the last game. And then to lose Christian Benford, who's a good cornerback. They lost him, and then a big drop off to Elam, and the Chiefs took advantage. I think that was a big play in the game. But Joe, I want to ask you just your thoughts. The two big plays on the game, the 4th and 1, they try tush push. The Bills don't convert. Chiefs get the ball in a short field, score a touchdown. I mean, that was really the difference in the game. And of course, the Bills did have a chance. Another 4th and 5, great blitz that Coach Spags came up with. Josh Allen still got off an incredible pass. It was almost caught by Dalton Kincaid. But those two plays, Joe, I'm curious your take on both.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't even want to go down the road with the whole controversy around the spot. I was glad that they did review it, and that at least doesn't give fans as much fodder. Fans outside of the Chiefs kingdom doesn't give them much fodder for saying, well, that one ref didn't call it, and the other ref, like when you watched it, the ref who was coming in from the bottom and the ref that was coming in from the top were in like different spots, and it looked as if the one ref thought that he had made it, but at least they reviewed it and they did take a look at it, and I'm sure that if it was something that they saw, they would have overturned the call, and they just didn't have enough evidence to see. I mean, that is huge. That is huge. And I mean, there was parts of it that you wonder about whether or not, Josh Allen has the body type to do the tush push. I mean, Jalen Hurts is not as long, and he's not as there's not as much surface area to him, and plus he squats like 600 pounds. So Jalen Hurts is a beast when it comes to that. So
Joe, that actually might help, because it's interesting to think about. In some ways, you think, oh, Allen's so much longer, he barely has to go any place, but it actually helps to be a little bit shorter and more compact, like Hurts.
Oh, absolutely. In a situation like that where you're trying to bulldoze yourself in, I mean, when you're tall, it's, your tall offensive linemen are always the ones who are not as good at run blocking. Why do you think centers and guards are usually an inch to 2 inches shorter than tackles? I mean, it's just the space that you're playing in that area. And Josh Allen, Randall Cunningham's they have advantage when they try to go over the top and reach the ball, like Josh Allen did that one play. I was just surprised they weren't just trying to actually run the ball. I just don't think they have the mechanics behind what the Eagles do to do the brotherly shove or the tush push, and I just don't think Josh Allen was the guy to do it. And the Chiefs were ready for it. They were ready to stop anything that they were going to run up the middle. I mean, when you've got a stout defensive front like we do, they're very disciplined, and they stopped it. I just think that came down to heart, and they just I don't think the Bills had the right people in doing that play. I don't think Josh Allen is the right person. I think Bills fans are probably wishing they just would have run some kind of play or some kind of designed run.
James Cook, yeah, right.
So that one I just think was just great defense by the Chiefs. I think they clogged up the middle. They weren't going to be denied on that play. And, the drop, oh my God, the fact that Josh got that off. I mean, everybody's talking about the play itself from a defensive perspective and what Coach Spags put at Josh on that play. I mean, it was brilliant, right? To make him have to throw off his back foot like that, was, I thought, genius, right? There was a play. But genius matches genius, and Josh Allen's a great quarterback, and he's scrappy. I can't believe he got that ball off. I can't believe he got that ball off with that kind of mustard on it.
That kind of mustard, and it was so close to being, not just got it off, but great point.
And Jeff, it was a drop. I mean, look, who am I, right? Big, goofy offensive lineman who caught, little spirals that came out into the end zone that, anybody could have caught. But I just think if you're a professional receiver like that I think a ball like that you try to catch with your hands, and you put your hands under it and you try to make a catch, unless it just completely surprised him and that he thought that Josh wasn't going to get that off. I mean, that's a play that I'm sure is going to be haunting him for a long time, and not Josh Allen. Kincaid. I think Kincaid's going to be thinking about that ball for a long time, probably the same way that Mark Andrews is going to be thinking about, the 2-point conversion that the Ravens had. And it's funny how that stuff comes back to bite you a little bit, right? The Bills are celebrating going to the AFC Championship game off of a drop pass. I mean, just be honest. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that was,
it's crazy.
They're celebrating that, and then next thing you know, they could have had one that could have set them up for a tie ball game. And that was a catch that probably a little bit harder to catch than the Andrews drop.
Yeah, definitely a hard to catch. Yeah, I mean, the fact that so much farther down the field, But Joe, that is great analysis there. This is, of course, we mentioned you live in Philly, you grew up in Philly, so this is like Joe Valerio Bowl #2. We already had that for Super Bowl 57. Joe, has your phone been kind of blowing up with people in Philly saying, "Oh yeah, we're facing your Chiefs again," or tell listeners about that?
Yeah. Well, number one, the phone is blowing up because people think I have an unlimited amount of tickets and ticket access to the Super Bowl, because two teams that I'm affiliated with, one because of where I grew up and the other one because I played for them, that I can just get as many Super Bowl tickets as I want. How about nil? We get no access to, I want to be all right, think about this. There have been probably, 15,000 players that have played in the NFL, right? I don't know, but do the math. I don't know. We could probably figure it out. I'm sure the statistics out there somewhere, how many players have played in the NFL. If they gave every player access to one ticket, it would be, almost a quarter, maybe a little less than a quarter of the stadium would be like for ex-players. Like, they can't do that. Like, they can't just say, oh yeah, you used to play here, have some tickets. I mean, that's just not the way it works, but it's funny. So that's number one phone blow up. Text blow up was tickets. But you're right. The other one is, wow, Joe, who are you going to root for? I mean, it's always, and I say this to Chiefs fans all the time. Like, if you grew up in Kansas City, you'd know who to root for, whether or not you were the head coach of another NFL team, right? Because it's a team that you grew up watching, that, your city where you live gets caught up in the moment. It is it's a tough push-pull for me. It's really hard. It's hard for a lot of people in my family. I have a lot of people in my family that are humongous Chiefs fans, and became diehard Chiefs fans over the years after my career, and following the team and spending time watching them and watching their rise and their success. So yeah, it's really hard. I think we'll probably pull, the same kind of mentality this year. We'll put cheesesteaks and hoagies on one side of the room. We'll put some KC barbecue over on the other side, and we'll let people's stomachs decide. And maybe I'll get like a Mama Kelsey jersey and, split it down the middle. But it's funny because it won't be a Kelsey Bowl, even though,
That's right.
even though Jason, still has a strong affiliation, still lives here in the Philly area. It's not going to be a Kelsey Bowl. So I think by de facto, it goes to the Valerio Bowl.
Absolutely, the Valerio Bowl. And Joe, next week we're going to be live from Radio Row. I'm actually going to the game. I'm going to be there all week, so we'll have some cool stories from that. And so the Joe Valerio Bowl will be live from New Orleans for Believe in Chiefs next week.
Well, if this isn't a good chance for us and our listeners to start petitioning the New Heights podcast folks for me to join it, just even if it was to do a quick guest spot, I know I could provide a lot of insight and tell some great stories, memorable stories about both teams. If the Kelsey brothers will let me.
Seriously, I wrote a story about the New Heights podcast when it just came out. Now it's even blown up so much and they've gotten so huge. So I had the email or text of like one of the producers, and I did mention that, but I never heard back, which is not on you. It's more that they've gotten too big for me. But man, you would be a great guest. But man, I don't subscribe to that show, but I watched like the clips on social media, and they've had LeBron on. They've had
that'd be good company.
Earl. Yeah, you definitely deserve it, but man,
I'd be like, who is this guy? Who is this guy?
Hey, but we'll keep this pitch go. We're gonna push it like the tush push. We're gonna make that Joe Valerio push to be on New Heights. So
let's see if the Believe folks can make it happen. Let's go.
Absolutely. Well, if you enjoy this show presented by Bet Online, please subscribe. We're available on your favorite directories: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Luminary, and TuneIn. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.